All right, everyone, we're a couple minutes past the top of the hour, so we're going to go ahead and get things started. Welcome. My name is Andrew McDougall. I'm on the marketing team here at Proof, and I'm incredibly excited to welcome you all to today's webinar, which is titled Real Estate Fraud is Rising: How to Regain Control of Your Closings in the Age of Artificial Intelligence. Our team knows that you have a ton going on, and whether that's personally, professionally, it's a busy time of year. We hope that you all had a really successful end of July. We know that this is unofficially the last month of summer. There's a lot of things that you could be doing right now. We appreciate that you've taken the time to join us and learn about how we can combat the threat of AI together. So over the next 45 minutes, we'll dive into a bunch of stuff, but we wanted to start by just appreciating you all for being here today. So before we kick things off, just a couple of quick housekeeping slides to keep us on track. So first, this webinar is being recorded. We'll share that with you after the fact. So if you can only stay for the first half, if you have to jump and take a call, we totally get it. We don't want you to miss any great content. We'll get this recording in your hands, so don't worry about that. You should see a chat feature in your Zoom bar. We do ask that you engage with our team through that chat function if you have any issues with technical difficulties, and we'll do our best to help you through those as they arise. Excuse me. If you have any questions as the presentation moves along, we ask that you place those in the Q&A section of the presentation that is also in your toolbar. When we get to the Q&A, we'll be pulling questions from the Q&A space. So just want to make sure that your questions get answered. If they're in chat, they are more likely to be missed. But we're ready and willing to answer as many questions as we can with the time that we have at the end. And then at the end, you'll have a chance to complete a survey about today's presentation. If this is your first time attending a Proof webinar, welcome. We love surveys, and they go a really long way towards helping us build content that actually matters to you and your business. So we greatly value your opinion, and we want to make sure that your voice is heard. So please just take a moment at the end to fill out that survey. As for the next 45 minutes, here's what you can expect. So I will kick things off and touch briefly on kind of what's going on in the world with the state of fraud and the growth of AI, and how that is impacting or is set to impact the real estate space. I'll then hand things over to Dan Reef, who is a member of our go-to-market team, and Dan will give you an overview of our new identity and defend products and how they're going to help offer greater security and confidence to you, not just with your online closings, but every transaction that you send through the Proof platform. We'll then turn things over to Kurt Hubner. He's our senior solutions engineer. He's actually going to show us our identify and defend products in action, and then we'll open things up to Q&A with the goal of answering as many questions as possible. One thing to note, we will be talking a lot about online closings. We will not be showing an online closing for the sake of focusing on the product features tied to identify and defend. If you are new to Proof, if you are new to the online closing space, the online closing is a really important part of this whole sequence of events. We would love to show you our platform as it works and the opportunity it could provide you and your team. Reach out to us in the chat or fill out the survey at the end, and we'll get a call in the books to show you what it's like to close online with Proof. So with that, let's get things started. So for decades, the only way someone could apply for a mortgage or close on a home was to meet in person and sit across the table from you and people in your company. And in these face-to-face interactions, we were actually able to establish trust in one another. But people these days want to do things differently. They want to do things on their own time, from the comfort of their own home, and in a way that's really convenient for them. And it pushes us towards this digital-first approach that many of us have been embracing for a number of years now. And this digital-first approach has changed everything about how we do business. There's just one problem with it. Moving these steps online means that we aren't always meeting with the people that we are working with. So you may meet them at the closing table, but if you're working on a mail-away closing or they opt for a mobile notary, there's a chance that you may never have an interaction with someone outside of an email or a text. So as an industry, we kind of have to tackle this question of how do we begin to trust people who we may actually never meet? And as technology becomes more pervasive in the real estate space, so too does the threat that comes from fraud. Earlier this year, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, which is a branch of the U.S. Department of Treasury, they reported that in 2021, identity theft and falsified records culminated in $81 billion in theft. And that figure, as we know, is likely a lot larger because fraud goes underreported. Maybe fraud hasn't been caught yet, or there are people who are frankly too embarrassed that they were caught up in fraud to come forward and admit that they were duped. And real estate is not exempt from this trend. And I imagine many of you are here today because you know that all too well. Just this week, Alta released a critical issues study on seller impersonation fraud. And what they found was pretty surprising. But again, maybe not all that surprising for you all who are on the front lines. Quick hit on the stats, 30% of title companies surveyed saw seller impersonation fraud firsthand in 2023, whether they were ultimately successful in that attempted fraud or they were unsuccessful. 1 in 5 title companies saw seller impersonation fraud in April of this year. So you think 30% for the entire year last year, 20% of folks saw it in 1 month this year, does seem to be an instance of fraud that is on the rise. Vacant land was the primary target, but there was also an emphasis by fraudsters on vacation homes and rental properties. And these attempts were made most often with the use of fake notary credentials and an improper use of genuine notary credentials. Now, going digital actually solves a lot of these problems. So for example, online closings with proof are either handled by your internal notaries or a member of our notarized network. And every notary on our platform is vetted and deemed to be in good standing before they can handle transactions. We also started issuing our own digital certificates for RON transactions earlier this year. And so that allows us to make sure a notary can't take their digital seal and apply it somewhere else outside of the platform for improper use. And these are really important steps when you think about setting the standard for online real estate transactions, but fraud remains a present and growing threat, and it's especially the case with paper closings. And it's in part because fraud is constantly evolving. It's relentless, and it makes the most of every available opportunity to it. Artificial intelligence has become kind of the new playground for fraud. It is now, artificial intelligence is now mainstream and readily available to everyone. So, personal information like social security numbers can be bought on the dark web for like 50, 60 bucks. AI can replicate anyone's voice in as little as 15 seconds if they have enough audio clips to do it. And then you have out-of-the-box software that can produce fake government IDs that can bypass things like TSA checks. And from there, anyone can create a deep fake that can talk and interact in real time over video. That moving picture in the bottom right is an example of that. Person on the left is just a skin behaving as the person on the right, but you wouldn't be able to necessarily tell that that is a deep fake in motion. And the crazy thing is that everyone in this room has access to these tools. It is a pervasive issue at this point. And when you package all of these things together, thieves have everything they need to trick the most diligent and cautious among us, including those who are at the closing table helping folks complete these transactions. And so, again, this mass availability of cheap fraud tools, it's a threat to your business, it's a threat to our economy, and especially these really high-value transactions that are so sought after by fraudsters. And it's why our customers, many of you who are in this room, are asking us for more. You want more training, you want more tools, you want more assurance. Online closings bring certainty and security at the end of the customer journey, but fraud doesn't just show up at the closing table. We're often asked, how do title agents spot fraud sooner? How can we better trust our real estate partners, and how can they better trust us? How can we protect documents with sensitive information from falling in the wrong hands? Think about the difference one keystroke can make from sending it to the right person and sending it to the wrong person. How do we make sure that stuff doesn't happen beyond just doing our common due diligence? And then how do we make sure that the person who shows up at the closing, whether they do it in an office with you, whether they do it in a mail away, is the right person to be completing the transaction on that property? And now many of you knew us as Notarize and came to know us as the leader in online notarization, but we were never just a notarization company. We like to think that we were in the business of trust, and it's why, as Proof, we're uniquely qualified to tackle the growing challenges of today. So today, we're going to walk you through the two new products designed to deter and combat fraud on the platform. Along with our online notarization and e-sign products, we have an identity verification solution called Identify that we're really excited about, and then a fraud signal solution called Defend that everyone we present to is extremely excited about. So we're really excited to show it to you. And these are security tools that you can add to workflows today with very little impact on your customer experience. So like Identify, for example, is an identity verification process that takes maybe 90 seconds of work on the part of your clients to verify their identity. And these resources don't require developer support, but they give you a world of information up front to help you gauge risk and make decisions that are in the very best interest of your business. So to explain these products and how they could benefit you all in the real estate space, I want to turn things over to my colleague, Dan.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you to everyone who took time out of their day to be with us. My name is Dan Reef. I joined the go-to-market team here at Proof a little over 3 years ago, and in that time, I've had the opportunity to work with literally hundreds of our title and escrow customers. Prior to joining the company, I spent several years at a title agency here in Virginia, where I still live, first in production and then in a business development role. And it was in that business development role where I quickly learned a lot of things, but number one, first, most of our partners had no idea how much work actually goes into each closing. And second, as that title really provides the real risk management process for the entire real estate transaction. And many of you met us as Notarize. I joined the company as Notarize and have used us for online closings to, of course, notarize and sign closing documents. As Proof, we've taken that same level of trust and assurance that you can expect from RON closings into multiple steps of the closing process, giving you more tools to reduce risk, make the right choices for your business, and ultimately protect your reputation. So I think for many of you who use our online notarization services and are familiar with our business, you know that one of our primary goals with online notarization is to bring enhanced security to all digital transactions. And that is how Identify and Defend fit in. We are enabling a comprehensive digital transaction solution so customers can use one platform, whether you need to sign, notarize, or perform an identity verification. You pick the tools that are most appropriate for your business processes, and by using a single platform, you're able to reduce costs and dial down friction for your clients. In the background, our platform aggregates the world's most effective identity fraud detection and behavioral signals. And when we detect something that doesn't seem right, Defend can alert you and give you the ability to act or remediate before it's too late. So you avoid losing time and money by doing title work for someone who's ultimately fraudulent. Again, a lot of people don't understand all the steps that it takes, people involved, and resources, really money required to make a closing happen, and especially happen on time. Declining deals because of suspected fraud stinks, but it's infinitely better than being a victim of fraud. Identify helps you protect your time and resources without introducing added risk or making the process feel too clunky for your clients. Proof identifies a standalone identity verification tool that allows customers to secure any type of interaction using Proof without requiring them to sign a document. It's lightweight, it's easily customizable, it's low cost, but most importantly, it's high trust. I'm sure this is a really familiar scenario with many of you. You get a call from a listing agent. They have a client, they want to list their property, one problem, they've never met them in person. And of course, they can't come into the office to close in person. So what do you do? Today, you might try to call them, see if anything sounds suspicious, do some like Googling, check out, social media, anything you can do really online passively to see if they're legit. You can try to force them to come into an office, but if that's not possible, you might lose the deal. So if you could rule out instead fraud on the front end, you only spend time on legitimate transactions and wouldn't have to lose out on deals because you're nervous about seller-side fraud. And that's exactly why we created Identify. Identify was purpose-built to address stringent standards for multiple unique industries, and there are many ways it can be used. It can even be used via a QR code for in-person closings or as the first page of a mail away. And on the next slide, I will provide a brief overview of how Identify works. First, a client will receive an invitation to verify their identity. As the first step in ensuring you're actually asking the right person to prove their identity, the client will first verify their phone number. Then they will snap a quick photo of the front and back of their ID, and finally take a quick selfie. This is a simple, lightweight, 90-second experience for the client, but it's through this process that Proof will create a comprehensive identity report, provide that report to you, consolidating dozens of data points into a single source of truth. So we are not just asking them to simply verify their email or just take photos for the sake of taking photos. We're doing a forensic audit of all of the data points that we collect in this process. And here are just a couple examples of those data points. When we ask them to verify their phone number, we're running that number in the device against carrier data to ensure they match and have not been tied to past fraud or identity theft. When they take a photo of their ID, we run more than 45 checks on that ID, including scanning the barcode, extracting that information, and validating the customer data with the local DMV. When they take a selfie, we are running proprietary fraud and deepfake analysis to ensure that not only the person in front of the camera matches the person pictured on the ID, but also that the person has not used AI to create either of those images. Again, while this is a smooth experience for the client, it provides your business with the data that you need to make intelligent decisions and reduce risk. Identify is a tool that can be used at multiple points of the closing process, and many customers we work with use Identify as an opportunity to verify identity at the beginning of the customer journey. It gives them confidence to invest the time and resources to begin the search and underwriting process and move forward with the closing, whether online or in person. Whether you choose to use Identify to facilitate a mail away or an online closing, Defend is the layer that underscores every transaction on our platform, and it's always looking for fraud. So I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this. This is an example of the Proof dashboard. Here, Defend is providing real-time transaction monitoring for everything you do on Proof. Whether you notarize, sign, or identify, all of these transactions can be run through Defend. Defend will mark every transaction with a risk score so you know which documents or signatures deserve a second look. Again, it doesn't matter if it's an e-signature, notarization, or identity verification, or even if they're meeting with a notary. We take a holistic view of the behavior of the individual, analyze hundreds of signals, and return to you a consolidated risk score. And I think really one way to think about this is a layer that you could consider a firewall for your business. Additionally, the platform is very configurable. We allow you to dial down friction for customers or add additional friction for individuals who you're concerned about. So not only does this allow you to block out folks who are trying to commit fraud or who are bad actors, it also allows you to give your good customers a better experience. We're providing monitoring for everything that you do on our platform. So again, whether you're notarizing, signing, identifying, closing on a home, all of these transactions are run through Defend. When we see something that doesn't seem quite right, our system alerts you and gives you the ability to act or remediate before it's too late, catching potential fraudsters before you lose valuable time and resources doing title work for what's ultimately a fraudulent listing. I think it's important to note that Defend is live. We're helping customers catch fraud today, and I've included a specific example here. This is a case where we had an individual come in who claimed to be the rightful owner of our property, and they were trying to sell that property. They were working with a title company who uses Proof, and that company chose to do some additional due diligence by putting the client through Identify for added verification. So, this user was asked to perform our most stringent form of Identify. They were able to even find good enough personal information about the real property owner to actually pass KBA. And they had a good enough fake ID that they were able to pass through credential analysis and the selfie verification. But where we caught them is that they were unable to pass the phone number verification. The phone that they had did not match the identity that they were presenting and pretending to be. And so they were pushed to meet with a member of our notary network for additional verification, and they bailed. They did not want to meet with a real person. They're hoping to do these fraudulent transactions 100% online under the radar without having to talk to anyone or speak to anyone. So they ended up bailing out. They tried a few more times, actually, to see if they could get through the automated process, and they couldn't. And so, looking more deeply into this transaction, you can see that their IP address is showing something impossible, right? You can't possibly be in Brooklyn and South Africa at the same time. And often we see, some sort of discrepancy in cases of fraud. So that's, just an example of some of the signals that we've built into Defend and how our customers are using it today to catch actual fraudsters. And it goes beyond just things like IP address and phone signals. I've included here just a couple examples of the hundreds of signals that we monitor as part of Defend. You can enable this without changing anything about your current proof integration or altering your current business processes. It's very seamless to turn on. And once enabled, you immediately have access to the full suite of tools. As your partner in fighting fraud, the proof team is here to help you understand the data, guide you through the process, and derive insights to help feed your company's fraud programs. So looking at identify and defend, it's not something that you need to use on just a specific part of the process. You can use it on any vacant land or really any listing scenario, and then continue to run folks through across each one of these interactions to ensure that their identity hasn't been compromised. Fraudsters sit and wait in a client's email address, waiting for those wire instructions to come through, looking to make attempts at fraud multiple points in the process. So this is why, with proof, with identify, you can trust and interact with clients across the entire customer lifecycle. If you'd want transaction monitoring across every single flow, you first need a platform that can digitize these flows, and that's exactly what we've done with proof. That's why we believe that every part of the closing should be protected with proof. So with that, I will pass things over to Kurt for a live demo.
Thanks, Dan. So again, thank you all for your time. My name is Kurt Hubner. I'm a member of the Solutions Consulting team here at Proof. I've been here a number of years working on implementations across all of our industries, from financial services, title and escrow, lenders, the whole product suite. And my goal for today is to show you both of these products in action. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to log into my Proof for Title account, and I'm going to show you how easy it is to set up Identify and verify a customer with it. I'm going to take over the screen share. Great. So I've logged into my Proof for Title account here, and you'll see here that there's this new tool called an EasyLink. And an EasyLink is something that we've supported for a number of years on our business platform. And what it is it's a way to generate a simple, reusable link that your signers can use to upload notarization documents, e-sign documents, or in this case, do an identity verification. We rolled it out for our real estate customers specifically to support the launch of Identify. So all we need to do is give this EasyLink a name and select what level of identity verification we want them to go through. So as Dan mentioned, our most stringent is IAL2 compliant. That's a NIST standard that actually defines a certain level of ID verification and assurance that is basically the highest tier of identity verification in fraud and security industry. And that has multiple components to it. It's got a SMS multi-factor authentication. It's got a selfie check that performs some liveliness checks, and it's got credential analysis included. We also can step that down to just credential analysis and that selfie check, just KBA, or a combination of KBA and some of these other checks. For now, I'm just going to do our IAL2 level verification and click Generate EasyLink. And as we show here, we give you this great static URL or QR code that you can print and, as Dan said, actually mail to someone. That would be a great example of how you could use this to combat, again, vacant land fraud, where you could physically mail this QR code to someone. So one, you're doing an actual physical verification that they're at the address they say they are. Two, they're now getting a digital verification associated with that. So it's a super powerful combination. I'm going to copy that URL, and I'm just going to log out of my account on the title side here. So I'm going to load that URL up, and switching gears, let's pretend I am someone that is trying to sell a piece of land, and I'm being put through this process by my title company. I'm going to click verify now, and I'm just going to set up an account and go through the process. Great. So first things first, I'm going to enter in my phone number to perform multi-factor authentication. It's going to verify that I actually have that phone. And as Dan mentioned, it's going to start using it as an opportunity to run some of those additional risk signals through our defense suite. You may have heard in the anti-fraud industry the notion of proving your identity with something you have, something you are, and something you know. This would be a great example of something that you have. So let me pull this up on my phone and enter in my code. Oh, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to present some basic information about myself, just like if we're going through the online closing process. It's going to ask me for my date of birth and my most recent address. Then we're going to move into those identity verification checks. So it's going to use that information and pull in what we can extract from the IDs and the information associated with the selfie and make sure, is this a cohesive identity? Does all of this match up? Are there bits and pieces that might be synthetic matched with real information? I'm going to proceed on this device, but our default is actually to pass people over to their phone. It's a great experience because it means that you can capture really clear images of your ID, your selfie, rather than relying on, let's say, a laptop webcam. But for the sake of this demo, I'm going to do it on my laptop here. For our IL2 level of verification, we're actually going to prompt them for two forms of an ID: a standard government issued photo ID, like a driver's license or passport, and then a supplemental document, which could be any one of those documents that we didn't already select, plus some additional things that have proof of address, like a utility bill, bank statement, etc. Great. So I'm just going to take pictures of my ID, and I'm just going to note that this is a test environment here. So you'll see that I'm using an ID that's been voided and grayed out, and I'm just going to capture an image of that and the back. And in production, what would be happening is that we would be running a number of those checks that Dan showed on screen. So does that barcode actually scan and match the information that's on the front? Once we perform the selfie check, does that photo match the selfie of the person that's appearing in the camera? And a number of other things. Is there glare? Do we have an exact copy of this ID that we've seen before? So not just the same ID, but that exact image of the ID, which would indicate that someone's maybe found that online and they're reusing it. For my passport, I'm just going to use another sample ID here, expired library card. And again, it's going to pass those automatically just because this is our demonstration environment. Perfect. Now for our final check here, it's going to ask me to center myself on screen, look at the camera, and you'll see here I'm split between two monitors, so I'm trying to gauge that, and I'm going to look left and right. And what it's doing there is a couple of things. Again, I mentioned it's looking against that ID. Is that the same person? It's also recording you as you turn left and right to make sure that it's not just a static image that's being presented, it's actually a face that's continuously turning. And is there things related to that that are concerning with, let's say, someone wearing just a simple mask all the way up to an actual deep fake where it's a hijacked video feed and there's little visual glitches that are happening over the course of that process. So that's it. I've completed the verification. It's that simple. Let's say what would happen if I failed any one of those steps. So Typically, what we'll do is we'll give people 3 opportunities to pass each of those steps. And if they fail any one of those 3 times, in the case of our IL2 transaction, we can actually refer over to a human agent to help them complete that verification, as Dan mentioned. In our lower tiers, it's just going to say, okay, you've completed that step. Let's move on to the next one. And it's going to record, hey, this person had multiple attempts, they failed, and it's going to flag that in our identity report that I'm going to show you later. So it's that easy. I just went through that entire process in just a few minutes, even with me explaining it end to end. So you can imagine that someone going through that process in real time would just take a couple of seconds, a couple of minutes to do it. So let's log back into our title account and look at that. So you'll see here we have a completed identify transaction, and we're actually going to produce a standardized proof identity report. And this is something that gets produced for identify transactions and any transaction that's secured with Defend. And it's a standardized portable PDF format that gets all the information that we just saw, pulls it in, and gives you a timeline of, again, how are people going through this process? When did it happen? If you have Defend enabled, where were they when they were doing each of those steps, and so on. This is a bit different from an audit trail that is associated with Iran. If you're familiar with that, you can think of this as the general audit trail for identity, no matter what the transaction is. Awesome. So that's an example of how you could use this at the front of the closing process. And again, that's the identify product in action. Let's talk about Defend and how that can secure the actual closing itself at the table or remotely. So we've gone through Iran closing in this case, and it's popped up in this tab that says identity risk. That'll appear once you've turned on Defend in your account. And you'll see here, we've got that medium risk flag. So let's take a look at that. And I'm going to go look at the new identity tab that shows up. We'll flag that we've detected a medium risk with this, and we can scroll down, we can start to see why. So there's some information that is good. So overall, this email isn't super concerning. Maybe we've seen it before. If we can pull an age, we'll typically try to check, is this like a brand new email that someone created for the purpose of this closing? Or is it something that's existed with an email provider for a long period of time? Does it match the identity? Is the name associated with that email address the same as the person who went through the closing or verification? Same thing with phone risk signals. Is this a landline? Is this a cell device? Is this a voice over IP device, which could be something that someone's purchasing, again, for the sake of just completing fraudulent transactions? And you'll see here, we give you a holistic view of all the verification attempts. So I have one verification attempt here where I just went through and I started the process. And it's got me in a similar address to where this closing is taking place in my hometown up here in New Hampshire. And you'll see here, I went through, I verified my email, and I just dropped out of the process very quickly. So there's a limited amount of information. Then I went through the actual closing process. And you'll see something a bit interesting on the timeline here. So I went through, I passed everything with flying colors. No issues with KBA. I passed credential analysis with the driver's license. Those are those 2 standard steps to any run closing on our platform right now. But you'll see if we scroll down, just like Dan mentioned in that example, you'll see a split between the actual address that I would be expected to be closing on, where I provided as my home address, and where my device actually was. I was in Sao Paulo, Brazil at the time of that, which is impossible. I couldn't have been in Brazil and minutes earlier in New Hampshire at the same time. So that's a really clear indicator that someone's obfuscating their IP address, trying to not show where they are. And so maybe in this case, because I went through my mobile device, I wasn't as diligent and I leaked my actual location. So it's super powerful. And again, no matter how many attempts someone takes to go through this process, we're going to give you a list of all of those attempts. And despite this being a normal closing, which again produces a normal audit trail and things like that, we're also going to produce an identity report in that same format that you just saw, that you can cross-check against the identify transaction someone went through at the beginning of the closing process to even compare, did they give the same ID? Did they give the same home address? Is it the same exact identity that I'm comfortable with proceeding with, let's say, dispersing funds for this property? So it's super popular, super powerful. And as Dan mentioned, it's completely seamless to turn on both of these features. Identify is available as a self-service option, and Defend is something that once we turn it on, It's completely seamless. It runs silently in the background, and it doesn't prompt your signers for any additional checks. It just builds off the information we're already gathering, enhances it, and then gives you all the tools you need to proceed with feeling comfortable with that closing.
Again, thank you for being here. We know for some of you it's lunch hour. For some of you, it's a busy time of year. We're appreciative of you taking the time with us today, and we hope to see you on our next webinar. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.